Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone. This is me, Jonathan Alexander, and I'm here to host our show, Life, Laughter, Happiness. Today, we have my guest, Kelly, my co-host, Kelly. Are you there, Kelly?
Yeah, hi, everyone.
Okay, hi. And Barbara is back as well. Are you there, Barbara?
Yes, hi, everybody.
Welcome back.
Now,
thank you.
Our guest today is Tom Adams. He's a friend of Kelly's. Now, he is a physics and math teacher, and he has done some things as far as linking science and spirituality and how they're related. Am I right in saying that you researched this and that you know a little bit about the topic?
Yeah, my background's in math and physics, and I do conduct research from time to time at Northwestern and or Notre Dame. I'm a physics person that does research. And then at the same time, as I shared with Kelly at one point in time, I went on a journey to kind of discover the meaning of life and spirituality. And so I studied, I went to a private Christian school and dabbled in theology, and then later actively participated in a number of churches. So my background is in math and physics for sure, but the pursuit of theology made me try to see both the visible and invisible world and try to discover the truth in both, mainly for selfish reasons, out of just being a curious person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have anything to add to that, Kelly or Barbara?
Well, I just think it's a natural thing to want to be knowledgeable and learn about why we are here. And I often think about this and wonder. I mean, there's so many questions. It's endless of why. So I would love to hear what you have found out and what you believe to be true. So let's start with one.
Well, I think, and in some of the conversations that I've had with Kelly prior to the show, she was sharing with me in a private conversation about frequencies and ascensions, and then I just in casual conversation, I said, well, all matter in the universe emits electromagnetic radiation. That radiation oscillates at a frequency, and then there's a lot of physics behind frequencies and oscillations. And then I think I had a conversation with Jonathan too about the relationship between the physical universe and energy. And so Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared, is the amount of energy that the E stands for energy and the M stands for the mass of an object times the speed of light squared. So there is a mathematical relationship between matter and energy. And the current physics research is showing that the most fundamental particle, in other words, the smallest thing that you could possibly break down of any matter, is not an electron or a proton or a neutron or a quark or a magnetic spin. It is literally an oscillation of frequency. And so, yeah, I think that there probably it's highly probable or possible that there's a connection for sure. Does that make sense?
I find it to be very fascinating and interesting, but it is so broad. can you break it down for our listeners in a more simple way?
I wish I could. Well, I thought a lot about how to explain that, and the thing is that I think that when human beings, as you mentioned, Barbara, we have a desire, a curiosity to kind of discover and learn more about existence, really, and that leads us to really on a pursuit of truth. And so, whatever this is, our discovery of how things work or why they're here or what makes things work is, for some, it leads them down a path of spirituality, and for others, it's more of a scientific approach. And but I think both of them are just a discovery of truth. And then if you were trying to unpack everything, that's where it gets a little confusing. But I think, and in all honesty, and I hate to have to admit this, I think science is going to take a while to catch up to that spiritual component, simply because of the limitations of what you have to measure and how you could, there are current scientific theories that we can't prove because we just don't have instruments small enough, fast enough, or efficient enough to make the observations and the measurements. But eventually we'll get there.
Oh, good. I'm glad that you know that we will get there, because that's exciting for our future. That is very exciting. I like to kind of mix the both. I like to know the science in it, and I like to be spiritual too. So I think that I'm kind of in the middle area there.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of people out there who just say, oh, I don't care. I don't care about this at all. And they just kind of go on existing. And that, to me, is so boring, and that's not deep. And so I like to have you on here to pick your brain. And so how do your students, because you teach high school level, how are they in, like, the mass of them? Are they really interested in this? Are they more spiritual? Are they more wanting to know the science side? I want to know what the young people of today want to know.
If they have I think sometimes they're distracted with social interaction, but I think that's been going on for the history of humanity, especially for teenagers. But when they pause that and they start to think about and they start to discover how things work, there's just a natural curiosity to all people to try and figure and find out more. So they do want to know. And I taught at a private Catholic school, which was interesting because the kids would go to theology class, and then they would come to my physics class, and they were always asking, does one contradict the other? And how can we connect it to, in other words, how can we prove these spiritual beliefs in a more concrete way through science? So I think people naturally want to do that. But there is the challenge because you're going to use physical world instrumentation and physical world measurements to try and predict something that's not necessarily operating in the physical world in the sense that we do. I think most people agree that there is the physical world that we live in and something that's able to go a little bit beyond and interact with us. And so that's the challenge. Right now, science is kind of limited and only able to measure what's going on in the physical world. And that's why a lot of people that try to understand paranormal activity, we're able to measure energy, we're able to measure certain things like that. And so that's why they measure energy right now. And perhaps maybe we'll get to the point where we could start to go beyond that.
Yeah, well, sometimes I think it takes experiencing something paranormal, like a spirit or being attacked by a ghost like I was to really know this is real. I mean, I felt it, and that helps along people's beliefs. Don't you find that? Do you talk about that in class?
Yeah, all the time actually. Yeah, because like I said, they'll come to me and they'll say, now we do it in the context of the theology of the school. But at the end of the day, if your spirituality is pursuing truth and science is pursuing truth, there really shouldn't be a contradiction of the two. Does that make sense?
Yes, but okay, so can science really prove that there are spirits that attack people?
I think so to some degree. I mean, there's evidence. There's physical evidence of when somebody gets attacked. Sometimes people are physically ill, and those physical illnesses or the symptoms can't be explained. I know there's some stuff done with electromagnetic radiation, so that's where you take a photograph and there's an orb or something that shows up on the photograph. I know that mediums and psychics, their experience that they feel describes a phenomenon that we use our physical senses maybe at a higher level, but those could be manifestations of some sort of change in energy or radiation and things of that nature. So, yeah, there's definitely some work on that. It hasn't been going on long enough to say that it's 100% accurate. Probably not, just because the instrumentation is new. As our technology develops, we can develop probes and tests to really hone in and fine-tune some of those phenomena that people experience.
That is so interesting. I bet that helps a lot of people. Has this personally happened to you? Have you come across a spirit or a ghost? I believe, yeah. I think my personal life experience has been really kind of being caught in the middle of a conflict. I have a desire in my heart to do good things. I do feel attacked at times, and I go through and I personally say my prayers that kind of protect me and deliver me. When I think about how that all takes place and how I feel those experiences or how other people are influenced to do certain things, I do see it as I always call it the visible and the invisible world. I see it as entities from an invisible world having an influence on the visible world in a way that I can't hear with my ears because I don't have any unique gift in that sense. But there's certainly, from my perspective, temptations and inspirations, and we have to choose. And I think at some point in time, as our technology develops, we could probably hone in on how that's done with an explanation. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have any questions, Kelly?
So what is your thought on things like some churches do like laying on of hands for energy work or praying or, being a conduit of the Holy Spirit? And does that work in there along with like energy and all, what we're talking about with physics? Or I know we've talked about different things like string theory and how it's possible that, bits and pieces of about every belief that's out there might be possible. and maybe all of it can coexist at the same time, you know, and all be true. So what are your thoughts on these?
Well, yeah. So, gosh, it's a difficult. It's an easy question to answer, but my answer will be very technical and it might be difficult to understand. So I'll give an example. In quantum mechanics, an electron can be in one spot or another, or it can be in both, or it could be in neither. And that's not how we're used to things operating in the physical world. How can one thing be in two places at once, or not be there at all, or be in one place or another? And this is a natural phenomenon that we've documented, recorded. We know this to be true in physics. So when you think about that, how does that happen? Well, there's some science behind that, and there's some theories we can't prove yet, but the math works out. And basically what it says is that an electron, which is matter, can transform and leave this universe or plane of existence and manifest itself in another location or be in two locations at once. And so when you see that science is kind of going that way, then it's not that much of an inference to say, all right, there is the possibility for there some way for someone to have an influence over here but not have an influence. So you see this dynamic where there's an ability to kind of go in and out of the physical world that we live in, and it's not too far of a leap to say that there's some sort of spiritual influence that operates outside of our physical world, but can come into our physical world, remain in our physical world, and then leave. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of like people that astrally travel.
Yeah. So that, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So how does it do that? Well, it has a lot to do with the space-time fabric and gravity. But basically, you can travel to different parts of time if you bend the space-time fabric, which mathematically is possible. And they're currently working on that at CERN with the particle colliders. So right now we can generate very tiny black holes, which will eventually lead to like wormholes. And wormholes can basically take you from one point in space and time and transport you instantaneously to another point in space and time. So when you think of like, I can leave here and go to another part of the galaxy or even another universe, you would think in terms of wormholes. But right now in our physical world, we have electrons that can leave our existence and come back. So it's not that far of a stretch to say that's possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So now to understand how that happens, we don't know how that happens. We just know that it does. So it is possible for somebody from the outside world, outside of this physical universe, like an entity, like a spirit or an entity, to coexist. In other words, live in our physical world, but not necessarily be seen by us, because we know that there are electrons that are there, but now they're not, and now they're back. So it's possible that somebody could live and exist in this world and then leave this world, but still remain, and then come back. And I believe it has a lot to do with energy and oscillations, and I think our minds are quite capable of doing more than what we're aware of.
Tom?
Yeah.
I texted you just now. I don't know if you got it. Did you get the text?
Let me see.
We have a caller.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Is it okay if I put a caller on?
Yeah, let's take a call. Let's see what they say.
Okay. 484, you're on the air.
Hello, it's Christopher. I find your topic pretty interesting because I astral travel all the time. And
yeah, you do.
Hi, Christopher.
hello.
Hi.
Hi, Christopher.
Hello, sir.
So, if you don't mind, I know you have a question, but can I ask you a question?
Always.
When you do that, what is your, and if you could say it kind of quickly, like in a minute or two, what is your experience when you leave and travel to another point in space and time?
Before I feel shaky or wobbly like I'm floating.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So what was your question?
Also, can also portals exist? I've read stories of people disappearing and stuff. That they go into another reality or dimension or whatever. I've always found that curious.
Yeah. Yes, it is possible mathematically. There's a theory called string theory, and in order for all of the fundamental forces to line up, where we have the math requires 11 dimensions, and so the world or universe that we live in is actually 4 dimensions, which is 3 dimensions for our space that we take up, length, width, and height. And then the 4th dimension that we always measure is time. And so string theory, which is the math that says all this stuff is possible, has 11 dimensions. It's the only way that the math works out.
Oh, wow.
That has led to research in the field of subatomic particles. And one particular particle they discovered is called a God particle. And then there's a gravitron. And we believe, the scientific community believes that for some of these natural phenomenons, about like an electron going from one place to another, somehow it's possible that it can maneuver from one dimension to the next. So everything I just explained, you could think of it in terms of just moving to another dimension. In other words, a spirit that existed in this world could just simply move outside of our 4 dimensions and then come back in.
Oh, wow.
And when you choose to come back in, you can come back in anywhere. Black holes are kind of like, or not black holes, wormholes are kind of like portals in the sense that you can literally bend space-time. Think of like a sheet of paper.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a sheet of paper, and you draw a little circle on that, a little point on the paper. And so that point is a location in space and time within the plane of that existence. Well, you can take gravity and bend space-time. So now imagine that same piece of paper folding over in half onto itself. Well, if you were to transfer that point to the other side of paper that's touching it when you fold the paper in half, and you transfer the point to that other side of paper, and then unfold the paper, you've moved from one point in space and time to the completely opposite side of that plane of existence. So this bending of space and time with gravity is how that takes place. And the math works. And Einstein really did a lot of that work almost over 100 years ago, and they're just now coming up with the technology to discover it. So
and eventually make use of it too, I think.
Eventually, yeah. So as they go through the math that Einstein and some other brilliant physicists have come up with, and we develop the technology to see if those things are actually true, I think we're going to discover a lot of cool stuff, and we'll be able to prove some of these things. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I think we'll probably be able to travel anywhere. Do that with it'll cut the time and distance.
Yeah, that is the thought. And sometimes, and I think people like yourself are able to do that with their spirit or soul. And how you do that is to be honest with you, I'm not an expert other than the fact that I believe that it's possible. And then return back. So I think that's what you guys are doing. And I think at some point in time we'll be able to do that in the physical realm too. In other words, we'll be able to get on a craft or enter into something and take our whole bodies with us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You answered everything. I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So it sounds like Star Trek isn't that far off when they say, like, beam me up, Scotty. Eventually we'll be able to.
Close, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like, yeah, we'll see. We'll just think of all the technology that's developed since the 40s and 50s. There's a huge advancement in technology and science discovery since the 40s and 50s. So I think that'll continue to grow and operate, and just based on our own curiosity. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Wow.
I think doing sci-fi movies have a lot of truth to them. They know a lot that they are slowly telling us what is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. Kelly, was that you that mentioned Star Trek, or was that Barbara?
Oh, that was me. Yeah.
Kelly.
Yeah. Their little phasers that they talked on. Isn't it fascinating that our cell phones, remember the flip phones, how much they look just like those things?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Yes. Oh,
I didn't think of it until now.
Yeah, and think of like the Bluetooth earpieces, and then in Star Trek they hit their little thing on their chest and they talked into it, and now we have Bluetooth earpieces and yeah. Yeah, they
nobody
record a
thought
lot
that
of
would
stuff.
be possible. A lot of people would think that, that's never going to be possible. So why can't we like dissolve and be in another place? I mean, it's going to happen.
Or the holodeck.
Oh my gosh.
It is
the
possible.
holodeck.
We would just have to develop the technology for that.
That's exciting. I love this.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but just so you guys know, I'm going to be doing some research this summer on artificial intelligence at the University of Notre Dame, and they're working on uploading data from like human consciousness, and just to see if they could transfer it to a computer. And it's been in some movies, but that's really the research that's being conducted right now.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I saw that on your resume. Let me tell you something. It's funny because that you mentioned that, because there is a robot called Sophia, and it's in Hong Kong. And what I've actually thought about doing is getting Barbara to call if she has the WhatsApp and see if we can get Sophia on our show. Now, how good is Sophia in your opinion? Do you think that it's all hype, or do you think that she's really capable of talking?
Well, that's a great question, and I hope that my answer isn't too long-winded. The human mind operates in neural clusters. In other words, every experience that we have, everything that enters into our five senses, it creates a cluster, a neural network in our brain, and that's how we store our memories. That's how we differentiate between a blue balloon and a red basketball and a yellow tennis ball. I mean, so everything that we experience is stored in a biomolecular fashion. Artificial intelligence in computing up until this, probably the last 5 years, has just been a matter of programming all those things in. In other words, I could program a computer that if it saw an image that was orange and about a certain size and spherical in shape, that it's probably a basketball. But that's not the same as learning. And that's not the same as discovery and true intelligence, where we discover things and we make associations and we label and group those associations, and then we have the ability to make inferences. So I would have to double check and see where they're at on that research with that particular robot. But that's where we're moving towards. Is okay, we're trying to figure out a way in which we could take an object and like a camera and hook it up to a computer and then give the computer the ability to create those similar neural networks, but instead of having like a biochemical, physiological way to store the data, which is how our brain works, that we use an electrostatic way to store the data and then go through and think and cluster things. And so we're in the infancy stages of that right now. But I think at some point in time, we'll get there. Yeah.
The reason I asked that question is, many years ago, there was and I'm sure you've heard of it, Eliza, the chatbot, Eliza, was this, it was meant to impersonate a psychiatrist. Well, it impressed my father, who was a psychiatrist, so that he was really impressed by it. But one of the things I found that the chatbot seemed unable to do, or seemed it was like if you were to go see a psychiatrist, you were to tell them that your husband was abusive, you're pregnant, you got addicted to meth, and then you lost the baby. Those three facts generally happen as a result of one another. You understand? You get depressed, you get addicted to meth, your husband's abusive to you, leads you to come to meth. You understand what I'm saying? But when I talked about this to Eliza could not link the three events to one another. It could talk about the events separately. Like it could say, if you were to say, I lost my job, I'm broke, and I'm living in a trailer. Well, those three things, they could tell about those three things separately. But a human can, ascertain that one of those things have to do with each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of like the supercomputers that are programmed to play chess. And so we still have human beings that could beat these supercomputers. And what the supercomputers do is they analyze every possible move. And so if I move one piece on the board, then what the computer does in a fraction of a second thinks of all the possible responses that a human player could have for that move, and then it counters, and it basically plays the game to the end. And it does it all in a fraction of a second, and that's how it determines what move to make, because it chooses the move that's most likely to win. That's not necessarily how the human mind works, though. What's fascinating to me is that a master chess player knows exactly what the computer is doing and uses that to their advantage sometimes. And it would say, well, if I want to, and kind of countermeasures the movements of the perfect chess player, and they still beat these computers. And so I think that human element, having that freedom to choose to do the least likely thing or just kind of throw logic to the wind and emotionally make a decision or make a decision based on faith has a lot to do. I think that's tied into how we connect and label things too. And it'll be interesting to see.
Because one of the things I was going to tell you is that about like when Gary Kasparov played Deep Blue, they actually made the argument that the only thing that Deep Blue was really programmed to do was play Gary Kasparov, not necessarily play chess. And I think there's some truth to that, because with all the combinations of chess that there are, I have found that every time that a computer and a human play chess, they always say, well, he could have had a draw if he had just moved his rook to a certain place. And I think the difference, because there's so many combinations, Sorry. See, that the difference between winning and losing is really only a couple of moves. Sort of like the way you give someone a Rubik's Cube and then they solve it, but they don't really care what combination the cube is when you give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I see it as sort of like it's like the Rubik's Cube has so many combinations. But like Kelly has a friend who will take the cube and solve it in 30 seconds. So the person doesn't care what combination the cube is at. Right, Kelly? You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
The person doesn't care what?
What I'm trying to say is that there's millions and millions of combinations to the Rubik's Cube. Okay? But if I give your friend an unsolved Rubik's Cube, he doesn't care what combination the cube is at. He can solve it in 30 seconds. You see what I'm saying?
30 seconds. Yeah, 20 seconds to 2 minutes. Yeah.
Right, but it doesn't matter which combination, the millions of combinations, he can solve it in 30 seconds. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that I think the difference is between solving it. Go on with what you're saying.
I mean, he does have, like, a strategy. Like, he showed me, okay, here you do corners, here you do edges, here you do, like, the cross in the middle. So, you know, he does have, you know, his strategies that tend to work. Like, for me, I would get frustrated, and, like, when I tried with it, and I would get, oh, wow, I got the whole red side, and then I'd have to screw it up to do the blue side, but he knows what colors are opposite the other, and if you turn this, what's going to happen before he does it. So, you know, he showed me there's kind of like a formula to it. So it would be really interesting to get him on because he can show us, and you know, but
one thing that I was thinking of as you guys were describing that is that I think the thing that's interesting about computers and the physical world and science and logic is that we use that to make predictions and try to infer things, but I think the thing that makes human beings so unique and really, really different than anything else really in the universe is we can be inspired to just throw that all out the window. We could, while solving the Rubik's Cube, just say, I don't really care if I solve the Rubik's Cube. I'm gonna walk outside and check my mail, and then when you walk outside to check your mail, you might find a person that needed somebody to talk to, and you talk to that person, and you get the sense of there was a reason I sat down the cube and I walked outside to talk to them. And I think it's as I understand it, or how one of the worldviews that helps me to understand that is there's inspiration. And I think the thing that humans have is we have a free will. We can choose to follow the algorithm or the logical path to achieve a very specific goal, but at the same time, we could be led to just abandon that goal completely and go in the other direction. And I think that's kind of how that ties into spiritual matters, because I think sometimes we'll just make a decision based on some sort of inspiration or even in some cases a temptation. And it's interesting how we love organization and structure, and the universe we live in is very organized and structured. But sometimes we totally abandon that structure to do something, but it still works out for our betterment or the betterment of someone else. And so I'm always fascinated with that. And I don't know how you would prove that other than it happens every day to all of us. Does that make sense?
It does to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So
does to me as well.
I just want to know. I really want to know. What was I going to say? I would like some way of being able to predict and know exactly what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life and how things are going to go. Unfortunately, nobody has figured that out yet.
Yeah, that's true. Well, God has. God knows.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the fun about being a human being is that we just kind of have to patiently, just kind of go through the motions and kind of ride the wave. It's like we're on a tour bus, and we're just seeing the world and seeing life and various interactions and how they work. But I believe that I don't think that there's anything that's truly random or not meant to be. Does that make sense?
Yes. So you don't like the feeling of being surprised, because that's like a major feeling that, don't you think that humans need that element of surprise? But you think you could live without that, Tom?
I like good surprises. No, I think to tie it into science, I remember one of my professors, and we were talking about chaos theory in physics. And so chaos theory in physics is that if I take a particle in my bedroom and I fling it into motion, that particle will fly around every square inch of my room on a totally random path and never cross its own path in the entirety of its flight. So that is total chaos. But then when you think about it, that would have to be very structured and very organized for it to never cross its path. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think a lot of things are paradoxical in nature, and that's why it's so challenging for us, is because we like to know and understand our structure, but I think sometimes the complexity of the universe that we live in and the dimensions outside of our physical universe are paradoxical. And there's a lot of things in physics that are counterintuitive like that as well, but I think that's how they were designed to be.
Do you think that our outcome is always going to be the same, but then we could have like unknown paths to get there, like that particle? Or is that path, how it bounces all around, is that every step planned out, or does it bounce erratically around? And that's kind of a surprise. What is it?
Well,
is it random, or is it always going to be in that order?
Well, according to the theory, it would be random. But what if somebody threw an obstacle in front of the particle? In order for that chaos to remain, then the path would have to be altered, right?
Yes.
So if there was a predestined path that seemed very chaotic, but in order for it to be chaotic, it had to be highly structured, and then we threw some chaos into the chaos, it would just need to be restructured so it could remain chaotic. So yeah, I think that my personal worldview is I think that God orchestrates paths for us, and He allows our free will to choose, but at the same time, He kind of knows what's going to happen. It would be like me, I'm a father and I have kids. I have, if I take a 2-year-old or I'll make them a little older. If I take a 5-year-old and I sit them down in the living room in a chair, and then there's a table in front of the chair, and I take a gallon of gasoline and matches and set them on the table. And I say to the 5-year-old, whatever you do, do not light these matches and pour this gas on it.
Mm-hmm.
If I
By
say
the way,
that, yeah,
he's not going to do it.
yeah.
We have another caller, but I'm gonna
Okay.
go ahead and take this
Wait
call.
a second.
But Christopher, you stay on. You stay on if you want, Christopher. 201,
Can we
we're
let
on the
him
air.
finish his thought?
Well, yeah. Well, what I was going to say is this: is that if I walk away, I better have a plan, right?
Yeah.
If I care about that child and I don't want that child to hurt themselves, I'm going to have an alternative path. And so I think that's kind of how the universe is designed, is that sometimes he might not light it on fire, But if he does, I better have another plan. I might have a fire extinguisher behind my back. Anyways, let's get the caller.
Yeah.
Okay, area code
Hello.
1. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, guys. I don't know what the topic is, but I'm so glad that I called Jonathan because I couldn't find his show. I don't know what's going on with BTR.
Did you have a question, caller?
What is the topic?
Physics science and spirituality.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just trying to understand everything that's going on and understand what to do. Basically.
Now, when you say you're trying to understand everything to do, what do you mean by that? What you
There's a lot is
supposed to
happening. Yeah, a lot is happening. I'm trying to make some major changes, and I'm just kind of feeling stuck with it.
I don't know, Kelly. What do you think?
Are you trying to talk to a psychic?
I don't know what I'm trying to do right now. I just want some clarity. What's going on? You know, energetically, a lot of stuff is happening.
Oh, yeah. We're in a spiritual warfare type time.
Yes.
Yes. So, I've been talking with a lot of psychics, and they've said, like, in the last 4.5 days, there's been a big energy drain for all of us who are fighting on the side of light and God, because the negative forces, or the devil, whoever's going to look at it, is trying to take from us right now, and they're really trying to battle. And so we just have to steadfastly pray and ask, that we can be bathed in the blood of Jesus and protected, and we will feel renewed strength. It's just right now that those things are kind of happening in the undercurrent, in the space that we can't see, but we're certainly feeling. And I've heard that it's going to go on for about the next 2 weeks, where we're going to be maybe getting some strange dreams, maybe some of those your little messages when you're in the shower, your brain's not really thinking about anything, and then it has a thought, or like in that little space of time before you fall asleep, or right when you're waking up. So you might want to write these things down and see if it makes sense to you when you have those things come to mind. So that might be a little message for you. And just make sure that you're doing you're purifying your home and your space and your
And that's what I'm trying to do. And I believe the devil is using my son. I know that much. And he's, oh, God, it doesn't even make any sense. And it's like the more I try to purify my space, is the more he'll make a mess. And he knows that I got a lot going on.
Yeah.
He's dealing with his own stuff.
Calming down. But right now, the devil is trying to get his forces up, and
he's doing a good job. He's doing it at work. He's doing it at work. You can listen to even the questions that other people are asking on BTR, and it's like we're all going through this. All of us that are asking questions are all going through the same thing. You know, and just to touch on science, though, right? Because I actually teach science. I teach science and math, and there's this one website that I registered on, Live Science, and some of the things that are coming out, like in the universe right now, that are puzzling scientists, is enough to let you know something big is going on. You know, very much so. It's not just the political stage, the world stage. It's going on in the universe, and but we're not hearing about it in the mainstream media. You know, there's a lot of things that are coming close to hit the planet. There's a lot of volcanic eruptions that, you know, are showing up in places you would never expect, in the ocean, and we're not seeing any of this. There's a lot of things that's going on, and it's mind-boggling because we tend to pay more attention to what's going on with the people, but the world, the entire planet is feeling it. Like, what do we do? Just sit there and just let it happen? Because I personally know I have honestly felt and seen tremors, and I have turned around and said to other people, "Did you see that? Did you feel that?" And it was like, "Yeah, I did, but maybe someone else didn't because they weren't paying attention."
Can I ask you a couple questions? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm just curious. First of all, what was your name again?
This is Jackie. Remember Michelle and I did the show with you?
Oh, hi, Jackie. No, I'm just a guest. This is Tom.
She had her sock.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were Jonathan.
No.
You sound like Jonathan.
Thank you. He sounds handsome. So Jackie, it sounds to me like you have like a spiritual background. Are you like a Christian? Because you mentioned the devil.
Yeah, I am a Christian, but I'm also aware. Like I believe in the Bible. I believe in Jesus. I believe in the prophets. I believe that the entire truth wasn't told to us, and I do believe in ancient religions and practices.
So what I'm gonna try and use your own belief to kind of help you with some of the. It sounds to me like you're a little anxious, and so one thing that I know.
People's stuff.
Yeah, one thing I know for certain is that it seems to be that, and I'm really kind of just paraphrasing or restating what Kelly stated. You know, the devil at times causes the most chaos when he's about to lose or be defeated, and mostly he gets very angry when God's about to bless somebody or do something for someone. I know from my personal life experience that when I am attacked or involved in situations where I feel like I'm just basically being attacked or something feels out of place, they usually mean something good's gonna, something God's gonna bless you in some sort of way. With regards to the world, I mean, I always look at it like this: if there's no harm in Jesus returning today, if I'm gonna be united with God. So I try not to be afraid of calamities. If they come, they come. I can't stop them. And my personal worldview is that I'm a child of God. He loves me. I try to do right by people. And, if I'm trying to be a good person and I'm doing the right thing, I believe that things will work out for me. It might not be in this lifetime. It might be in the lifetime to come. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
If we're battling spiritual things, you gotta battle spiritual things with spiritual tools. So the one thing you can do is pray. You really can pray, and the prayer may not necessarily change the outcome of what's going on around you, but it certainly does give you peace, and it removes anxiety. And then you just kind of go through. You kind of ride the wave. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes, I've been watching and praying for so long and all day.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that my prayer life, I mean, I don't necessarily sit down and read the Bible every day, but I meditate on certain scriptures in my heart and in my mind and in my spirit. And I'm constantly, I sing to myself because I used to love to sing out loud. So I sing to myself. I try to stay close to my spiritual beliefs and practices, but it's still a struggle, and I understand that faith without works is dead. So I am living by faith.
Mm-hmm.
Even when my faith is tested, I am living by faith.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing, one thing that I found that helps me profoundly, you mentioned faith, right? So the greatest spiritual gift somebody could have is faith, hope, and love, right? 1 Corinthians chapter 13, correct? So what I find fascinating about that verse is he says the last of these will be love. Everything else will go. So one of the things I do, or I try to do, when I'm feeling anxious or I feel like things are out of place, is I just love the people around me. I love myself. I love my family. And that just brings you a profound peace. Love a stranger, say something, say hello to somebody, and some people can make it difficult. But there's something about doing things for other people that really frees us from that anxiety. Does that make sense?
Oh man, my life is given to others.
I know.
I work in an environment where I give till I had today off, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't move halfway through the day. And I can honestly tell you, it's out of exhaustion from just giving. I've given so much where, I have to give to myself. And in the midst of trying to say, okay, I'm going to give to myself, I still have to turn around and continue to give. And often without receiving anything in return. Not even a thank you, not even an appreciation. So if that's the call in my life to give, and give, well, I'm doing it.
Well, there is something that you might want to look at a little different way, and that is that you need to take time for yourself, to nurture yourself. And I know that that's hard because you're at the point of exhaustion and you're like, I can't do one more thing. And it feels kind of selfish to take time out for yourself, right? But that's kind of how,
when I attempt to take time for myself, my family will make it appear as if I am being selfish, and they got to know that I'm exhausted. But that's just the reality. They have to know. You would be blind to not know it.
Yeah.
But everyone
don't understand.
Well, from what I'm seeing, just across the board, everyone just seems to be out for themselves. And that's
sometimes
it.
They're so used to you giving that they don't see that maybe you need to have something too, because they're so used to it. But if you could take some time out, even if it was 20 minutes, and maybe have a nice bath with some Epsom salts and maybe a candle, maybe some prayer hymns, something. Cleanse yourself drinking some natural spring water while you're taking your bath. The Epsom salts helps clear away negativity, but it also helps replenish your body.
I salt with Epsom salt and sea salt or kosher salt and oil, and even sometimes when I'm in the bathroom, I'm being interrupted.
Yeah.
I mean, roll my eyes.
Yeah, because the Epsom salt's great because it soaks up some magnesium in your skin. That helps with stress, fighting that off. But you just need to really take some time just for yourself and don't feel selfish. If you have your bucket is empty, you're not going to be able to give any more to anyone else. You're not going to be able to give anything for yourself. You got to always keep a little bit back in there.
And Jackie, think of it this way too. You know, it's okay to take some time for yourself and recharge your battery, because then that gives you the energy that you need to help those that you care about. If you run yourself ragged, then you won't be of any service to them either. So it's not an easy balance, but you can set some boundaries, and maybe they will be frustrated, but they'll be okay. You take care of yourself a little bit, get some rest, and then you'll be better able to help those that you care about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But I think the only way it's going to happen, I would just have to just leave and just go away. Just completely go away.
Yeah, I do that sometimes.
And not have anybody contact me. And then it would appear as if I'm being selfish and I'm being neglectful.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And then also suffering can be redemptive too. I don't know if you realize what a gift you have in the fact that you're willing to sacrifice for others to the point of exhaustion. That's truly a gift. It really is. And like you said, it's kind of a calling. But even Jesus went up to the mountain and prayed. Even Jesus walked away from the crowd and went up into the mountain and prayed by himself. He left the disciples behind. He left the crowds behind. They wanted him to heal them. They wanted him to feed them. They also wanted to kill him. But even he took time to himself and went up in the mountain and prayed by himself. So you need that time to recuperate. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to pray for you, Jackie. I'm going to pray for you when I get off the phone, and I'll keep you in my prayers, okay?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I will too.
You're welcome.
We're about out of time. But thank you for coming on. I know it always is. Thank you for coming on, Tom. And thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for all the callers as well.
Thank you, everyone. And
thank you.
Thank
you. Like
you,
to come on
Tom.
again?
We loved having you. That was so interesting. I hope you come back.